Hi Math 111. In this video we're going to finish up section 1.2 by talking about two final graphs of equations that you may not have experienced before. So let's just get started. This is again a new equation and we're going to consider its graph. So this first equation is the equation y equals 1 over x. Okay, and this equation is something you may not have seen before, right? And you may not have even considered what its graph looks like, right? Notice some important things here. The x is in the denominator of a fraction, right? So that's different than, for example, something like, so this is not the same kind of equation as something like y equals x, right? These are not the same kind of thing, right? So the x is in the denominator here, major difference, okay? So let's see if we can get at what a graph of this thing is going to look like. So let's use our graphing calculator. So let's click it on. Okay, my always says that everything's cleared out here, so that's fine. You don't have to push clear probably. But we do want to go to our y equals menu here, remember? Y equals, so that we can enter the equation that we have here, so we can get its graph, okay? So we need to enter 1 divided by x, okay? And remember, we can use this division key here to generate that fraction. So we can do 1 divided by x. Where's our x? There it is. Okay, remember we have this key press history over here so that you can see the order of the keys that I pressed. Remember, you read the keys left to right and top to bottom, just like you read text, right? So I pushed on, then clear, y equals 1 divided by, and then variable, which is x. Okay. When we have that graph there, we can go ahead, or we have the equation there, we can go ahead and hit graph. So let's hit graph. Interesting. Okay, so I'm currently in a 10 by 10 standard viewing window, but I'd like to zoom in a little bit closer. Yours might not look like this because your window might be different for some reason. If you want to make yours look just like mine, you just need to hit the zoom button and select 6 for standard. Zoom 6 will take it to a 10 by 10 viewing window. So zoom, hit the number 6, and again it'll take it to a standard 10 by 10 viewing window, meaning 10 tick marks here, 10 tick marks here. Good. So let's zoom in, maybe to get a better look at what's going on here. So let's hit zoom again. And remember, zoom in is option 2. So let's hit 2. Okay. And now I haven't hit enter or anything. It's blinking near the middle there, notice. It's waiting for me to tell it where to zoom in to. Okay, so if I hit enter, it'll zoom in at the origin. So hit enter. Nice. Okay, so this is what the graph of 1 over x looks like, and we zoomed in, so we know that this sort of behavior here, this line continues up and this line continues out, right? So let's make what the graph looks like. Let's do a sketch in our notes here. So our graph looks something like we've got this part here, and then we've got this part here. And there's, some important things going on in this graph, some of which we can't yet talk about. We'll talk about later on in this course. But for right now, what's interesting to notice is that these little arrows here are really important, right? It's important for us to know that these lines continue going up and up and up right here, and continue going down and down and down and down and down right there, okay? And again, continue going out to the right, and continuing going out to the left, okay? If we think about x's that we might want to try to plug into this equation here, since this x is living in a denominator right here, it would never be okay to plug in a 0 there, right? We would never be able to say when x is 0 and then figure out what a corresponding value of y would be, right? Okay, so notice on our graph here that the y-axis here, remember all of those points that live on there correspond to when x is 0, right? Because this is our x-axis here and this is our y-axis here. Notice that on this y-axis here, which is where x is equal to 0, right? There's no graph part there, right? There's no graph part there, and that's for a reason. That's because you can't ever put an x in here and get out a number, right? If you tried plugging in an x here, your equation doesn't know what to do with that, right? Okay, so it doesn't know where to put a dot, right? So it can't put a dot there. So for right now, that's all we can sort of say about that. Two important things to notice is that the graph of this equation has no intercepts. It never hits the x-axis and it never hits the y-axis. Okay, never hits here. It just gets close and close and close, but never actually hits it. And it never actually hits the y-axis either. It just gets closer and closer and closer. Okay, so that's our first new graph that we're thinking about, and let's talk about our second one. We'll experience this that graph more as we move throughout the term. But here's our second one, and this is one that's not covered in this section of your textbook, so it's really important to take good notes during this part. Right, so this is our other new equation. Okay, this one is the equation y equals absolute value of x. Okay, and I'm not sure if you've seen these absolute value bars before. You hopefully have. You've seen them with real numbers. For example, you've seen them with something like, what's the absolute value of -2, right? Well, remember that just the absolute value bars just drop off any sign that's here, so the absolute value of -2 is 2, right? Or the absolute value of -1/3 is 1/3. Right? And the absolute value of positive numbers is already itself, right? Because there's no sign to drop off. Absolute value of 4 is 4. Okay, so that's what this equation is doing, is saying y is the absolute value of x, right? And let's see if we could graph this thing. This one's a little bit trickier. Okay, so let's hit y equals to go back to our y equals menu. Let's clear out that graph right there. Okay, I want to show you an interesting feature of your calculator, which is what's called the catalog. Do you see right there above the 0 it says catalog? This that little screen that it'll take you to has all the commands for your calculator there. So if you can't find something, you can always look in your catalog. So let's hit second catalog, because I want to say, how do I write absolute value bars, right? There's no like button for that, right? I don't know where a button is for absolute value bars. So in your catalog here, you'll notice that it's alphabetized, and if you hit down, you can scroll through, and all of the commands that the calculator can do are alphabetized for you. You're not going to know what most of these do, and that's okay. But if you're looking for something specific, you might be able to just sort of find it in the catalog alphabetically. So let's go back up to A, and you're probably seeing that my key press history is getting really full of these up and down buttons. I'll clear that in just a second for you, so you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm here at the very top of my catalog, at the very, very beginning, at the very top. And notice that this first command, ABS, of, like parentheses here, right? This says absolute value, and then what you get to do is plug in what do you want to take the absolute value of here. It kind of works like a square root with that little parenthesis there. So let's hit enter to use that absolute value in our y equals. Okay, now it says y equals absolute value. What do we want to take the absolute value of? We want to take the absolute value of x. So we hit an x, and we better close that parenthesis. Okay, because all parentheses you leave open, you should close. Okay, that now says y equals absolute value of x, right? So that's our equation here. Let's go ahead and hit graph and see what we get. Nice. Okay, good. If you want to see that in a 10 by 10 window, remember you hit zoom and standard. Zoom 6, zoom standard. So hit a 6. Nice. So the graph of this thing looks something like this. Right, comes in a nice diagonal here, comes back out in a nice diagonal. And those are straight lines right there, right? Each of these are straight lines on both sides, okay? This one over here kind of looks like y equals x, and that one over there looks like y equals -x, right? Okay, so and that's sort of what's going on here. Some other things are happening we can talk about later, but in general, this is the graph of y equals absolute value of x, right? Straight on both sides. And let's just talk about its intercepts. Notice it passes through the origin, right? Since it passes through the origin, what that means is both the x-intercept and y-intercept happen at 0, 0. Okay, so both that origin point right there is both the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Great. Okay, so for right now, that's enough, but I'll continue on with a video for 1.3 and maybe a little for 1.5.